Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are talking about their plans for handling news coverage on their platforms ahead of 2020. The leaders of the social networks all spoke at different events last week. Facebook especially has been the subject of heated criticism lately over this topic.
CEO Mark Zuckerberg announced its new News tab feature on Friday, which Facebook will pay some publishers, a move it has previously avoided. Axios Media reporter Sarah Fisher joins us now on the set to talk about this. We should note that CBS News will be a publishing partner with Facebook. So how exactly will this News tab work? How will consumers be able to get their content on the platform?
Great question. Let's talk about the numbers first. 2.7 billion people use Facebook, or Facebook-owned properties. Mark Zuckerberg said at that Paley Center event last week, which I attended, that it will be a success story if 20 to 30 million people use that tab. So they're not expecting a huge volume of people to be actually visiting the News tab. They likened it to the other tabs they've created, like Watch and Marketplace. I don't know if you're scrolling through your Facebook feed, but not many people go to those tabs.
Never even heard of them.
Exactly, right? So that's the problem that they're going to face is, yes, they're putting all this effort and energy. The number that sources tell us is $90 million will be shelled out across projects to get news content on the platform, paying publishers. But at the end of the day, only 20 to 30 million people they expect to actually be using it.
Is it going to be like the Apple News, like, on your iPhone? And you have it, I guess, on an Android phone, too. You get news stories, CBS and others that pop up from the news sources that you follow? Or what exactly will be in this news tab?
I think part of the challenge...
A lot of fake stuff, or like what?
Well, I think part of the challenge for an idea like this is the way people get their news on Facebook is very passive. And this is going to require you to even though it's just clicking on a tab, to actively seek it out. And I don't know if Facebook users are going to do that.
I think Facebook would agree with you. That's why Mark Zuckerberg said, look, it's a success story if a small percentage of our audience goes and uses this. But what is it going to look like, actually? We know that they've selected, at this point, 200 publishers to be a part of that news tab. Those publishers were selected through something called a news index. Earlier this year, Facebook put out a sort of application to be a part of this news index. You had to have things like an established URL. You had to have things like bylines. So there was criteria in order to be considered for this, and that criteria was made up through actually the news industry. Facebook met with a lot of different companies.
We just show our viewers. We just showed a graphic that showed some of the news organizations. Right, here we go, including CBS News, as we pointed out. So my concern isn't about these news organizations. My concern is, you pointed out some of the criteria, but a lot of very, let's just call it bloggers, propaganda hyperpartisan sites can actually come up with those criteria.
That's right, and that's the big question that Facebook's going to continue to face as they add more publishers. They hope to eventually expand beyond 200 and also eventually expand to other places around the world. What if you have a publisher that meets those news index criteria, but they publish things that people know to be exaggerations or not full truths? That's why they're getting hit. Breitbart is the #1 example right now that people are pointing to. I would say in the next few weeks, when they start coming out with new publishers that are going to be a part of it, expect more hyper-partisan publishers on both sides to be targeted by the public as a problem here.
So what about Instagram, Twitter, these other platforms? Are they going to attempt to tackle the news as well?
I was fascinated. I was here last week in New York. Instagram had a full-day news conference. Twitter had a full-day news conference. Facebook had this Facebook News event. In 2015, you would have never heard of this, these tech platforms doing news events and paying publishers. But fast forward 4 years, because of what happened in 2016, they are shelling out the resources. What's going to happen is this. Twitter's always used editorial curation. They've always hired journalists to help curate those moments, and they're going to continue to do it. Now, they don't pay publishers. What they do is they actually share the revenue. So they incentivize your content to work really well, the ad revenue. Instagram has a news team. They're working to make sure that there's less misinformation on the platform, but they're not building out a separate news destination at this time.
So interesting. These publishers, clearly you cannot thumb your nose at how many billion? 2.5 billion users of a platform. You need to get a piece of that if your competitors are going to get a piece of that. On the other hand, the very real stories that we have been reporting on, and others, about the problem with Facebook, the inherent problems, that they seem unwilling, Mark Zuckerberg seems unwilling to tackle? There's a lot of, speech to Congress about we're trying, we're attempting, but really no concrete steps that anybody's been able to see.
What it sort of looks like, and this is, I guess, a concrete step, but for the longest time, they've thought of themselves as just platforms, tech platforms that happen to have news on it. Now they realize that regulation might be coming if you don't regulate yourself, even though Mark Zuckerberg often says maybe we do need to be regulated, right? I don't know how sincere he is. That's what he says. It appears as if they're attempting to self-regulate. Just will it be enough? Because once you start to censor, then you become accused of illustrating a bias or showcasing a bias. So.
Right. So great to have you, Sarah, because this is some real food for thought. We appreciate it as always.
Thank you so much.